Okay, I would like to start with, just a sec. Okay, there we go. I would like to start with discussing some of the tools that we use for identifying plants. My favorite tool is in my pocket all the time, except for when I forgot it at home again. It's my phone. I have data on my phone, and so I can always access the GoBotany website. I will, that's the image on the top up here. And I will, throughout this presentation, show you how to use the GoBotany website for identifying a plant. However, if you're the kind of person who doesn't want to have your data-enabled phone with you to identify plants and you would prefer to have a classic field guide, I highly recommend the Newcomb's Wildflower Guide. It covers Eastern North America, and the way that it's set out to explain how to get to the plant that you're looking for is really easy and straightforward, and it's great. There are others. Lone Pine publishes very many field guides, but it has a few good ones for Southern Ontario, including one for some for wildflowers. There's one that's wildflowers of Southern Ontario specifically. And there's one that's the Trees of Ontario. That one is currently out of print. And so if you find it at a used bookstore, grab it. Otherwise, there is the Northern Forest Atlas that published woody plants of the Northern Forest. This one is New England centered, but it applies very well to Southern Ontario. So that one is also great. The Royal Ontario Museum also publishes field guides. They have one on wildflowers, and they are working on one on trees. You might also like to have a hand lens with you. A 10 times or a 20 times magnification hand lens is all you need. You can get them online. You can get them for as little as $5, and those $5 hand lenses are just fine. They go up to several $100s. Please don't go spending several $100s on a hand lens. I like one with an LED light because when you're in the forest under dense canopy, even if it's a sunny day, it's a little dark under there, and it's sometimes difficult to see the tiny little details that you might like to see. Okay, so once you've got the tools, you need to have some botany words. And all of those tools that I just mentioned, all the field guides and the website that I just mentioned will teach you these words. What I've got here is a few scans of a few pages from Newcomb's Wildflower Guide. At the very beginning of the book, they have a section on basic terms where they go over the terms that they use throughout the field guide and show you pictures and explain them. And there's a glossary. GoBotany also has a glossary in it. There are so many terms in their glossary that they have it classified by categories, pages of the letter of the alphabet. And one of the really lovely things about this one is whenever you see a word that's in green underlined with a dashed line, if you hover your cursor over it, a picture, an illustration comes up showing you what that is, along with the text definition. You will need to know some words to describe leaves. You'll need to know about what the leaf arrangement is, whether it's alternate or opposite or whorled. You'll need to know if you're looking at a leaf that is simple or compound. You might have learned the word compound leaf as divided leaf. It's the same thing. You'll need to be able to describe whether the margins or the edges of your leaf are entire, toothed, or lobed, and how they are entire, toothed, or lobed. And to help with learning a little bit of this terminology, I have a video I'd like to share with you. It's a video that my team created over the summer as part of a self-guided workshop for learning how to identify trees by their leaves. All right, so something I'd like to point out, I hope that video was helpful, and something I would like to point out about it is I mentioned that you look for a bud along a twig or a stem to figure out where the leaf begins to help you know if it's a compound leaf or a simple leaf. That only applies to woody species, trees, shrubs, woody vines. You won't see that in herbaceous plants. And herbaceous plants are plants that will that are all soft above ground, no woody parts to it, and they die back to the ground in the winter. However, with those plants, it's usually pretty obvious when you're looking at a compound leaf versus a simple leaf. And if when you're identifying through any of the tools that I show you here or anything else that you use, if you're having trouble getting to the right species and you weren't sure if what you were looking at was a simple leaf or a lobed leaf, just do it in one way as though it's one kind of leaf. And if it doesn't work, go back and do it the other way. Okay, we're going to go over flower words very quickly. These are words that you would have learned in your high school biology class, but sometimes that's a long time ago. So let's look at the typical parts of a flower, beginning at the bottom of the flower. The stalk that the flower is attached to, and there isn't always one, but if there is one, flowers have their own words for their stalks. They're called pedicels or peduncles, depending on the kind of flower in the situation. Above the stalk, you have the section where all of the other flower parts attach, and that's called the receptacle. The outer layer attached to the receptacle are the sepals. Those are the ones that look like little green petals. And all the sepals together, the whole set, is called the calyx. Next, you have the petals, and they're always in this order. And the petals are usually the colored ones, and all together, the whole set is called the corolla. Moving inwards, you next have the reproductive parts that produce and release the pollen, and those are the stamens. The anther is the part where the flower releases the pollen, and the anther is usually attached to a filament to the receptacle. And the centermost part of the flower is the pistil. At the very bottom, you have the ovary, in which there are the ovules that become the seeds. And there's usually a stalk called the style that leads to the stigma, which is the sticky part that catches the pollen. Okay, now that we've got a little bit of terminology down, let's learn how to use GoBotany. There's the URL for GoBotany here in green. And if you would like to, you can pull it up on your phone and follow along as we will practice identifying a plant with it. Don't worry, you don't have to do that. I've screenshotted the whole process so that you can see it. GoBotany is a plant identification website, and it has many resources in it. The resources that are of interest to us are the keys. I'll describe what that is shortly. The glossary, the thousands of plant photographs, and the descriptions for 3,500 plants. Again, GoBotany is New England based, but it works for us just fine. There will be plants there that we don't have, and there will be plants that we have that they don't. If you are looking for other geographies, I guess, where there's a good overlap in plants, there's Michigan, where our flora is very much a mix between what's in New England and what's in Michigan, with a lot of overlap to both. So you can use field guides from any of those places, and they're going to work very well for us. Okay, let's talk about keys. A key is a group of questions that, as you answer, brings you closer and closer to the identification of your plant until you get there. There are two kinds of keys, both of them present in GoBotany. There are interactive keys and dichotomous keys. Interactive keys is many questions, and each question will ask you about the characteristics of the plant that you're looking at. You choose which questions you want to answer in an interactive key. And every time you answer a question, it narrows down the number of possible plants. in GoBotany, there are two interactive keys. One is called the simple key, and you can see it in the bar up on top. I'm circling simple key here. A little bit further on is full key. They work exactly the same way. The only difference is the full key has all 3,500 plants that are included in GoBotany. And the simple key, they narrowed it down to the 1,200 most common plants. So I would suggest start with the simple key. If you can't get to the plant that you're looking at with a simple key, you can try the full key. Maybe it's there. The dichotomous key, you don't choose which questions you answer. You always have a set of two questions, and you have to choose which one best describes the plant you're looking at. And then what you choose will lead you to another set of two questions, which will lead you to another set of two questions, and so on until you get to your plant. We're going to practice by identifying this plant. I went out to RBG and parked by Cherry Hill Gate and took a short walk down the trail and took pictures of a few plants and decided this is the one that we're going to identify together. So this plant has a yellow flower, which has an irregular shape. We'll get to that shortly. It has a spur. The spur is this bit, sticks out the back. The leaves are arranged in an alternate pattern along the stem. And they are simple, and they have teeth on their margins. And another character that I thought was really cool is if you look at the stem of the plant, it's covered in this white waxy substance that if you rub it with your finger, it rubs off. So with those characters, let's see where we go. All right, so the first thing that Simple Key asks you is what category your plant fits in. Is it a woody plant, an aquatic plant, a grass-like plant, orchids and related plants? Is it a fern, or is it all other flowering non-woody plants? And if you're not sure what characterizes each one of these groups, they put a definition there for you, a quick summary definition up on top, and then it lays out the key characteristics for them. And it also gives you, in the exceptions, a few hints to know whether what you're looking at is actually in this group. So our plant here is part of the all other flowering non-woody plants. So I would click my plant is in this group, and then it would take me to another set of, oops, I forgot. In the pictures that I showed you here, I'm actually not really sure if it's in these other, I know it's not a grass or fern or an orchid, but could it be aquatic? I didn't show you the habitat in these pictures, and I didn't show you enough of the plant to know if it's woody. So I also took a picture of the habitat. So if you're taking pictures to send to people to help you identify a plant, make sure you get all of this, get the habitat and as many characters of the plant as you can, and make sure your pictures are in focus. So we see that it's in a terrestrial habitat, it's not in the water, and it's down low to the ground. There are woody trees here. It's obviously not a tree, and there's nothing indicating that it would be a shrub to me. If it were, I'd better take a picture of the woody twigs or the bark so that I know. So this is how we know that it is in the all other flowering non-woody plants category. Once you go in there, it asks you to further categorize it. So is it something that's in the daisies, goldenrods, and other asters? And if you're not sure what makes that, they give you the definition again. Is it in other herbaceous flowering plants with alternate leaves? I think that's what we've got. But always check all your options before you pick one. Is it in other herbaceous flowering plants with opposite whorled or no leaves? It is definitely not that. It's the one with alternate leaves. So you click the button that says my plant is in this subgroup. And it takes you to, surprise, more questions. But at this point, it also tells you, well, you have 291 possible matches. So if you really want to scroll through that many pictures, I guess you can do it. But Much better is to answer the questions that it provides here. To get to the questions, just hit continue, and it takes you here. The first question up on top is the habitat, and it's an easy question. It's just, is it aquatic? Is it terrestrial? Or does it grow in wetlands? The difference between aquatic and wetlands is aquatic plants are submerged. Wetland plants grow out of the water. It is terrestrial, so I choose terrestrial, and I can see here that it's narrowing it down to 276 possible plants. And I hit apply selection. The next question would be, which New England state is it in? It doesn't apply to me, so I'm going to choose to not answer that question. I'll go to the next one. What's the leaf type? And then when you click that, it gives you pictures and definitions again, which is so kind. So is the leaf blade divided into smaller leaflets? It's not. We already decided that is a simple leaf, so we select that option and apply the selection, which is going to take me down to 188 possibilities. I'm going to answer more questions. I'm going to answer what's the flower petal color, because that's really easy. It's yellow, and it takes me down to 59 plants. Apply selection there. And the next question is, what are the leaf blade edges? Again, another one that's really easy to answer for this plant. And if you forgot, it gives you the definitions and pictures. The edge of our leaf has teeth. Apply that selection. We're down to 35 plants. Okay. So the next question is about flower symmetry. And this is where earlier I said it's an irregular flower, and that I would describe later what that means. So when we're talking about flower symmetry, there's either more than two ways to draw a line through the flower and still get a mirror image. I could draw it this way, I could draw it this way. I'm going to get a mirror image wherever I draw my line. But with a flower like this, there's only one way where I could draw a line and then have a mirror image. And that is what is an irregular flower. And there's a whole bunch of words for describing the same thing. In this particular manual, they call it a bilaterally symmetrical flower. So we'll choose this one. That takes us down to 7 matching species. That's exciting. All right, at this point, I could just look at the pictures and pretty easily get to what my plant is, but I'm having so much fun answering questions. I want to answer more. So I'm going to say, get me more questions. And when I do that, hang on, I'll go back here. Here's where you do get more questions. When you got to the bottom of what's available there that you want to answer, get more questions, and then it gives you categories. I'm thinking about that white waxy coating on the stem, and I really want it to ask me something about it. So I'm going to click the stem, shoot, and branch category, hit get questions. And the additional questions that show up at the bottom of the column full of questions. The first one is on stem succulents. I don't really want to answer that, so I won't. The plant height, well, I technically could, but I don't want to answer that either. But what about stem bloom? What is bloom? If you hover over that word, because green has a dashed line under it, the definition comes up along with a photograph of it. And this is exactly what I was looking at on the stem of the plant I'm looking at. It's a white or white blue powdery or waxy coating on a surface that can be rubbed away. Excellent. I want to answer that question. So I'll click it. And I will say my stem has a powdery or waxy film on it that can be rubbed away. And that should take me down to 2 plants when I apply selection, but for some weird reason, it still gives me 4 matching species. That's okay, even though it's twice as many. 4 pictures are pretty easy to look through. It is really clear that what we're looking at is Impatiens pallida, or pale touch me not. And the picture I showed you of the flower earlier was from the side. I also took one from the front, and that matches that very, very well. You notice here, it says show photos of flowers. If you click on that, it will give you other things you can look at. It will show you pictures of fruits, leaves, the plant form, and the stems. So you can look at pictures, pictures of other parts of the plant than what was showing up when you opened the website. When you click on the pale touch me not, it will, also called pale jewelweed, it will bring up a summary of the plant, and you can click through some pictures and read the summary. But if you want to know more, you hit the button that says full profile, and it looks like this. It gives you a bar that you can scroll through to see all the different kinds of pictures. It will tell you the common names. It has two range maps on the left-hand side. The first one is for New England, and the second one at the bottom is for North America, which is really for the USA. But at the very top of it, you get some Canadian provinces, and you get an idea of whether it's present in Ontario. If the range map is colored green, that means it is native to here. If it's purple, that means it's an introduced species. It'll give you some facts about the plant, and if you scroll down, it will tell you more about the habitat and the plant description. And there's even along the side sometimes a little section of what you can easily confuse this plant with, and that is one of the most useful parts of this particular key, in my opinion. I appreciate that part quite a lot. So you can bring your phone with you and use GoBotany to identify the plants that you see on your walk right on the spot. If you don't want to do that, you want to identify it at home or get somebody to help you with it, take pictures. Make sure you get pictures of the form of the plant, which I've got over here. I can see that it's low down and it kind of covers the ground in a carpet. I've got pictures of the flower from more than one angle. I can see the color, I can see the symmetry. If it was a more regular kind of flower, I would be able to count the number of petals or parts. You don't have to bring a ruler out with you to capture the size. Just use your hand or for scale, or if it's something big like a tree or shrub, get somebody to stand next to it, put your dog next to it, and tell them to sit and take a picture. Grab pictures of the fruits if they're there. The leaves, I like to take the top side and back side of the leaf. Sometimes they show you different information. The stem and the habitat and any features that you think might help you ID the plant, like that white waxy coating. Please take only pictures, take nothing else. We live in a very urban environment that is subject to so many pressures. We all need to do our part to help conserve these plants and their habitats. Adam will tell you more about this shortly. So while I was on the trail, I took a few pictures of more plants that I would like to show you, some of them because I want you to be able to recognize poison ivy all year long. This is what it looks like right now. And I have, after this, there's a few more plants that you will see if you go for a walk right now. Poison ivy. You've heard leaves of three, let it be. So here on the left, we have a leaf. And the leaves of three part refers to the three leaflets of the leaf. Now, there are lots of plants that have compound leaves of three leaflets. How do you know poison ivy from all the other ones? If you look at the margins of the poison ivy leaflet, you'll see that it is irregularly toothed. So look at this leaf here. There's a big tooth down here. I'd almost even call it a lobe. And then you go up here, there's more big teeth and they get smaller. And then you have small teeth on this side. And then you have no teeth at all right here. And that is very characteristic of poison ivy. Each leaflet has its own little stalk here. And if you look in this picture, you can see it's kind of carpeting the ground. It is woody. The woody parts do persist above ground in the winter. And yeah, you can get a rash from touching it. So if you can't see very well in this picture, but if you were to see this and you were to bend down and take a look at how the leaves come off the stems, you would see that they're arranged in an alternate pattern. Sometimes poison ivy grows looking like this. It's kind of like a carpet. Sometimes it grows as a nice sturdy woody vine winding its way up the tree. Sometimes it grows looking more like a shrub. So that's poison ivy. Get a good image of it in your mind and be careful. You will see it when you go out walking. Many of the other plants that you'll see flowering right now are in the sunflower family or the aster family, like this woodland sunflower here. This is also from the Cherry Hill parking lot right by Cherry Hill Gate. And the woodland sunflower is about 5 feet tall. It grows in woodlands on edges of forests where there's a little bit of light, oftentimes along trails, lucky for us, and in gaps in the forest where some light comes through. If you look closer, you will see that it has 2 leaves coming out opposite one another along the stem here. If you were to touch those leaves, they feel very rough. They're pretty cool. And this is about the size of the woodland sunflower flower head. You would see the blue-stemmed goldenrod, and we tend to think of goldenrods as the Canada goldenrod, which is what we see on roadsides or growing abundantly in fields. But we have about 30 different kinds of goldenrods in Ontario, and they can look, there's a lot of diversity in what they look like. This particular goldenrod is, this one was about 2 feet tall. It'll grow between 1 and 3 feet tall. And it has these clusters, small clusters of little yellow goldenrod flowers growing from the axils of the leaves. The axil of the leaf is where the leaf meets the stem, all the way along the stem. And I'd like to point out also that no goldenrods cause hay fever. What's causing the hay fever is ragweed. It's a very inconspicuously flowering plant. It has these tiny little green flowers. Nobody even notices it's flowering, but it grows alongside the goldenrods. So when we feel itchy noses and we're beside a goldenrod and we see that, we blame the goldenrod. However, goldenrod pollen is so thick and heavy that it can't be carried along the wind. It would just fall down to the ground. It's an insect pollinated plant. Next, you will see the large leaved aster. You will first notice these pretty aster flowers here. They are white to purple, and they grow in clusters, pretty wide, loose clusters. And then you might notice leaves that look like hearts with a very long tip. And you might notice that there's a lot of them. If you can see in this picture, there are many right here, and they are all connected underground. And they all grow in a little basal rosette, all these leaves coming from the ground until it decides it's going to flower, at which point it sends up this shoot with this lovely cluster of aster flowers up on top. And that was the last one of the plants that I am going to share with you today. I hope that you go for a walk and see all these plants. And I really hope that you learned a little bit of terminology and enjoyed learning about GoBotany. And I hope that you will try using it. It is a lot of fun.